I'm a really big fan of steak and pepper sauce, and that's what I'm going to be making. But instead of using a classic cut like fillet of beef or rump steak, I'm going to be using mince for this. And the reason I use mince is it's a different texture. It's also cost effective and it just makes for a really, really fast meal. This is something that I grew up on. When Mum wanted to cook us a really fast dinner, this is what she would do, and it tastes so good. Kids love it too. So, 2 pieces of baking paper. And I just want to use the baking paper to flatten out the meat here. Don't use any type of mince meat for this. You want the best quality mince you can afford. I would recommend you ask your butcher to mince the beef for you. So when I do go to my butcher, I ask him to mince chuck beef. Chuck beef works well. Also, rump steak works really nicely too. This is about 500 grams of beef here. Separating it into 4 even patties, so this recipe is enough for 4 people. Press it down. You know, essentially we're making rissoles here without the flavouring in the meat. I want to let the flavour of the beef speak for itself. We'll place another piece of baking paper on top, and we're just going to press that down. I don't want to over-press this because I don't want it to be as thin as hamburgers. We do want a little bit of thickness to it. Perfect, that's what we're looking for. I'll also add a little bit of salt at this stage, and when I put it into the pan, I will put salt on the other side too. A non-stick pan, and we want that to be really hot because we're essentially charring this beef. This beef doesn't take long at all to cook, pretty much a minute on each side. I don't want it to cook all the way through unless that's the way you like it. I want it to be medium rare in the centre. So once that's hot, a little bit of olive oil, and in with our patties, just very carefully not to break them up. And we want to hear that sizzle. That sizzle means that we're going to get a beautiful, crispy, crunchy surface to it. And this pan's quite large, so I can fit my 4 patties perfectly in there without overcrowding it. And like I said, 1 minute on each side. I'll also season this side, which I haven't done yet. Perfect. Now let's get on to this pepper sauce. In a mortar and pestle, I'm going to add 3 different varieties of peppercorns, and they all have different levels of heat. So let's start over here in this red bowl. This is Szechuan pepper. It's got a numbingness to it. It's a very famous Chinese pepper here that's been dried. It's intense, so you don't want to add too much of it. About half a teaspoon is plenty for this. So pop that in there, along with some pink peppercorns. Pink peppercorns are fantastic because of their sweetness. They're actually quite mild too. So if you do want to introduce pepper to your children, this is great. You can actually leave the Szechuan out, add the pink peppercorns, and it's a really nice mild pepper sauce there. So I'm going to add a little bit more of that. And the good old green peppercorn that's been brined. Now these come in a little green can, and these are the classic peppercorn that you use for this sauce. So I'm going to add a little bit of that in there too. These are softer, and what I want to do is just bruise them and crush them together, and have a look at that colour. And the smell, oh, it's delicious. Goes so well with this beefy flavour from these patties. So that's fantastic and ready to go. Now let's turn our patties over. Again, that's been a minute. I'll flip this one first. See that nice crunchy edge? This is what it's all about with these patties. This is just good quality beef, kept simple, that hasn't been overworked with many different flavours. Perfect, look at that. That just needs 1 more minute and then we can finish off this sauce. Now these are looking good, so they come out of the pan. I'll just put them on a little plate for now. And you can see that there's all of those gorgeous caramelised bits in the pan. This is going to flavour our sauce, so don't use a new pan, it's all in one pan. Let's add these shallots, and we just want to soften those slightly along with our peppercorns, straight in. And you can see that softens up nicely. And now we just want to cook off the alcohol, so some brandy in the pan. And be really careful when you do this. Woo! It's a big flame. It's for the theatre of it. But it is important to cook off that alcohol so you don't get that bitter flavour. Now we need a little bit of stock, so just some chicken stock. And then we just want to allow that to just bubble away and reduce by half. Once that's reduced by half, I'm going to add some cooking cream. And at this stage, we need some herbs. So a little bit of fresh thyme works really nicely with this. And now that's going to take about 3 minutes, and then I'll add my cream. Now this is reduced a lot, which is what I want. And just as the meat is resting, there's a little bit of the juice coming out, and we'll add that to the pan again, equals flavour. And now we can add the cream. So I'm using cooking cream for this because it thickens rapidly and there's less chance of it splitting, especially in this hot pan here. And that flavour of the cream against that sort of warmth and spiciness of the pepper works so well together. Let's give this a stir. That sauce is completely done. You want it to be thick enough so it coats the back of this spatula. See how I can draw a line through it? You know that it is ready to be taken off the heat. Now I've made some chippies because steak and chips, they go hand in hand. A big plate here. These chippies, all I've done is just sliced them and then roasted them in the oven at a high heat and salted them. We want a big pile of them, along with 2 of these patties, and then our gorgeous creamy pepper sauce here. We're just going to add a few tablespoons. I'd probably put this extra sauce on the side so you can dip your chippies in. Beautiful. And just for a garnish, a little bit of tarragon here that I had left over. That is the fastest steak dinner I have ever made. Very simple and also very budget friendly.